Hello. Now we're going to be looking at key quotations throughout the novella for Lennie. So basically, if you didn't watch the last one, all we have here is 10, 12 quotations that sum up Lennie in the novella. Just key ones that, hopefully will be useful. Things he says, things said about him, and yeah, hopefully it's a condensed version of the other ones. If you want more detail, obviously I thoroughly recommend you watch the stave by stave quotations for him, but if you just want one page to give us a summary of him, here we go. So first of all, we find out that he drank with long gulps, snorting into the water like a horse, and that tells us several things. First of all, the animalistic attitude towards his power, and obviously the animalistic attitude towards his simplicity, and obviously his behaviour there shows that he doesn't really know exactly how to go about things. He just does things in the most simple way. So obviously when he goes to stroke something and kills it, it's because he can't control his power, again because, like we've seen here, he doesn't really have the intellect to do things in the right way. Here we see his connection to George and how happy it makes him, because I got you to look after me and you got me to look after you. So he thinks about it obviously there's a double meaning there, because he thinks he's trying to do something, it's a symbiotic relationship, but obviously to all of us looking in on it, it looks like George is looking after him. However, we cannot forget that Lennie serves such a function and purpose in George's life as well, because he's a friend. So even though he doesn't look after him in the sense of physically the way that George looks after Lennie, he does definitely look after his mental state. Otherwise George might have gone a little bit more crazy, like Crooks, or as echoed, should I say, by Crooks. Crooks puts it very well in his points. So here we see George, he says, "Go on, George, how I get to tend the rabbits," talking about the most important thing to him. And obviously we can fathom from that he likes really simple things, and moreover that's the part of the dream, that's the part of the dream that he actually wants, just that kind of connection and understanding. And so it also tells us maybe that he's been a misfit all his life, and he's never really received true affection, and maybe that's why he's obsessed with giving affection. So some kind of strange maternal instinct. Here, when he first sees Curly's wife, he watches her fascinated. Obviously, the use of the word fascinated just tells us that he has a minor obsession growing, and it's something that's going to be very important to him later on. And obviously, it is because it seals his fate. Here we have Lennie leaned eagerly towards him. "Let's go, George, let's get out of here. It's mean here." And this is really sad, because it tells us that Lennie had some insight into what was going to happen, and even as big and as strong as he was, this is how tender and I don't want to say weak, but tender and sensible, that's probably not right, tender and afraid he was. He wanted to leave the place. He knew he was going to get in trouble. He knew maybe at some point that people weren't going to be nice, or that something was going to get out of hand, and he couldn't handle it. And the fact that he says it eagerly as well kind of shows like a childlike innocence. He really wants to do this, but unfortunately for him he didn't. So Lennie said softly as well, "We could live off the fat of the land," probably one of the most important quotations in the whole book, just summing up exactly what people wanted to do with their American dream. They just work for themselves, be their own bosses, and that's exactly what it was, and that is the dream that they were obviously chasing. Where, again, a demonstration of his power and the pain that he can cause a human being. It's really important to get this in, because obviously a precursor for what happens with Curly's wife. Curly was flopping like a fish on a line. It's just when he's breaking his hand, so it shows us the power that Lennie has. And then we have his desperation for George when when Crooks is teasing him in a way. He starts to get a little bit wound up, and then obviously he shows us here the need he has for George, as he says, "I wish George was here, I wish George was here." So obviously showing his neediness, and desperation, and obviously showing how important George is to him to be able to ease that pain. And obviously George has done it for him time and time again, so he wants George at that point. Slim says of him, "I've never seen such a strong guy," showing his unique place on the ranch, and also showing us why he gets on Curly's nerves so much. As he walks into to meet Crooks, he smiles helplessly in an attempt to make friends. He doesn't understand the social stigmas between the whites and the blacks. He doesn't also understand that Crooks's place is private, and he attempts to make friends, and it's kind of helpless. He doesn't really know what he's doing without George. This section here is obviously really important because of the actions that follow, here she dies, and that's what makes Lennie want to run off into the brush and ultimately gets him killed. Here, when we have the rabbit talking to him, even in his own mind, we get like an insight in how hard he is on himself, because here we've had his Aunt Clara have a go at him, and now the rabbits that he's been pining to look after, all novella, even the rabbits are having a go at him. So it shows he understands the gravity of the situation that he's in and how bad it is. And furthermore, it's an echo of George's voice, so it shows how much of an influence George has on him as well. So a little after that, again, we've got the screen for George, and in a way it's also the fulfillment of a wish, because he wants George to come and make it better, and George does come and make it better the only way George can at that point. And the ending, where he actually dies, is very touching and fitting, because he jars and then settles slowly and lay without quivering. So we know it was a painless death. His nerves weren't still going crazy, and he's settled slowly forward, so he's just kind of slumped into some strange sleep. And what we're supposed to take from that is that there was some comfort in this for Lennie, and so perhaps George has done the right thing.